Henry Sugar is the pseudonym of a miserly bachelor who uses his inherited fortune to fund his gambling habits. Henry is 41 years old and inherited his fortune from his rich father. He is too selfish to share the fortune with anyone, hence never married. He has a taste for clothes as tall but not particularly handsome. He drives a Ferrari, which costs about the same as a country cottage. All his friends are rich, and he has never done a day's work in his life. Henry just wants to make himself richer. Some buy stocks and shares, some buy land or art or diamonds. Some bet on roulette, blackjack, horses, some indeed bet on anything. Henry is a gambler and not at all above cheating. One summer weekend, Henry drives from London to the countryside to stay with his friend, Sir William W. The house is magnificent and so are the grounds. But when Henry arrived that Saturday, it was already pelting with rain. Henry wanders out of the drawing room and into the front hall. He drifts through the house, aimless, then finally mooches into the library. Sir William's father was a book collector, and the walls of this huge room are lined with antiquated leather-bound volumes floor to ceiling. Henry isn't interested as he only reads detective novels and thrillers, nothing like that here. He's about to leave when his eye is caught and held by something quite different. So slim, he never would have noticed it if it hadn't been sticking out from the books on either side. He pulls it from the shelf. The cover is dark blue with nothing written on it. On the first page, hand-printed in black ink, clear and neat, it said, "A report on Imdad Khan, the man who sees without his eyes, by Dr. Z.Z. Chatterjee, December 1935, Calcutta." The writer, Dr. Z.Z. Chatterjee, was a head surgeon at Lords and Ladies Hospital, Calcutta. On the morning of December 2nd, 1935, Chatterjee was in the doctor's restroom having a cup of tea. 3 other doctors were present with him, Doctors Marshall, Mitra, and McFarlane. Imdad asked to be subjected to any manner of tests to validate his claim. Imdad was 61 years old, with white hair and a white mustache. Imdad says that he travels with a circus, and every time the circus visits a new town, he goes to the largest hospital of that town and asks the doctors to bandage his eyes in the most thorough fashion. It is important this job is done by doctors, otherwise people may think he's cheating. Imdad seemed perfectly serious, so Chatterjee tried testing him by covering his eyes and having Dr. Marshall hold up his fingers. Imdad answers all of them correctly. Chatterjee glues Imdad's eyelids and then covers it with dough and then bandages the entire face to make sure Imdad cannot see anything. Imdad walks confidently out of the hospital and into the streets. Imdad took a bicycle and rode away. After watching Imdad perform even greater feats in his own circus act, the doctor interviews Imdad and he tells him his life history. Imdad was born in Kashmir in 1873. In 1886, Imdad joined the circus and saved 3,000 rupees. As a young runaway in a traveling circus, he sought out a guru known as the Great Yogi who could meditate while levitating his own body. Imdad traveled to the town near the Ganges and hired a horse cart to travel to the jungle. His traveling companion turned out to be a disciple of the yogi. The disciple disappeared once he learned that Imdad was seeking the yogi, but Imdad had kept an eye on him and followed him through the jungle. Eventually, Imdad reaches a clearing with 2 huts in it. Imdad hid in a tree and saw the yogi levitate with his own eyes. Imdad reveals himself to the yogi. Yogi wants to fling a brick at Imdad, but is immediately remorseful at his actions. Reluctantly, he taught him his meditation method, which gained Imdad his abilities. Imdad was 17 years old when he started meditating. In 5 years, he was able to concentrate for 1.5 minutes. By 1907, when he was 34 years old, he could concentrate for 3 minutes without wandering his mind. By this time, he could start to visualize the outline of objects in front of him without opening his eyes. For the next 8 years, Imdad perfected his technique to read playing cards, charts, and maps by keeping himself blindfolded. By 1915, he had perfected it, but the public never believed him. Though Imdad died overnight before the doctors could further study him, Chatterjee saw Imdad as a medical miracle. Imdad could lead to blind gaining sight or the deaf hearing. The possibilities were endless. Chatterjee carefully recorded everything Imdad said and bound it into a book for safekeeping. Henry is extremely interested in the book and believes it could change his life. The piece of information Henry is referring to is that Imdad Khan had trained himself to read the value of a playing card from the reverse side, and being a dishonest gambler, Henry realized he could make a fortune. He goes downstairs to the butler's pantry and asks for a candle, a candlestick, and a ruler. He takes them to his bedroom, locks the door, draws the curtains, and turns off the lights. After putting the candle on the dressing table, Henry notices with satisfaction that his eyes are level with the wick. Using the ruler, he positions his face 16 inches from the candle, as indicated in the book. Imdad had visualized the face of the person he loved best, which in his case was his deceased brother. But Henry doesn't have a brother, so he decides to instead visualize his own face. As Henry stares into the black area at the corner of the flame, his mind goes absolutely blank. His brain ceases fidgeting, and all at once he feels as if his entire body has become encased, snug and cozy within that little black area of burning nothingness. This lasted for only 15 seconds, then, no matter where or what he was doing, he made a point of practicing with the candle 5 times a day. For the very first time, he throws himself into something with genuine enthusiasm, and the progress he makes is remarkable. After 6 months, he could concentrate absolutely upon the image of his face for 3 minutes without a single outside thought entering his mind. By the end of the first year, he'd exceeded 5.5 minutes. It then comes the time to try the playing cards. Henry places a deck of cards upside down before him and concentrates on the top card. Initially, all he sees is the ordinary design of thin red lines on the back. He now shifts his concentration to the other side of the card. He focuses with great intensity upon the invisible underneath of the card. Eventually, as he visualizes the reverse of the card, a black blob becomes a space, a twisty squiggle becomes a 5, and thus the 5 of spades. When he picks up the card and turns it over, he is indeed right. Henry becomes a fanatic. He never leaves his flat except to buy food and drink. All day and often, far into the night, he crouches over the cards with the stopwatch, reducing his time second by second. In a month, he's at 1.5 minutes. 6 months, 20 seconds. 7 more months, 10 seconds flat. His target is 5. It takes him 4 weeks to get from 10 seconds to 9, 5 more to get from 9 to 8. Hard work no longer bothers him. 11 months later, on a late Saturday afternoon, he finally achieves the 5 seconds mark. The total time it took him to reach this moment is 3 years and 3 months of uninterrupted effort. There are over 100 legitimate casinos in London. Henry is a member of no less than 10 of them. Lord's House is his favorite. Upon arriving at the casino, for the first time in Henry's life, he looked with distaste upon a room full of horrible rich people. He searches for a vacant seat directly on the dealer's camera left at any of the blackjack tables. The dealer takes Henry's plaque and drops it into a slot. As Henry stacks his chips, he glances at the top card in the dealer's shoe. In 5 seconds, he reads it as a 10. He pushes out 8 chips, 200 pounds, the maximum stake allowed at Lord's House. Henry, with a staggering calmness and certainty, wins, but he must be very careful to not attract attention and should even make himself lose occasionally. The game goes on. Henry's advantage is so enormous, he has difficulty keeping his winnings reasonable. In an hour, he would win £30,000. There he stops. Henry is not almost certainly capable of making money faster than any other person in the entire world. The only untrue thing about him is his name, which isn't Henry Sugar. His name has to be protected. Henry, now with a lot of money for an hour's work, is puzzled. He couldn't understand why he felt so little excitement about this success. If this happened 3 years ago before the yoga, he'd go crazy with excitement and be rushing it off to a nightclub to celebrate. But that's not the case now. He feels sad. Every time he makes a bet, he is certain to win. There is no thrill, no suspense or danger. He knows he could travel around the world making millions, but is it going to be any fun? It's possible that the process of acquiring yoga powers has completely and utterly changed his entire outlook on life. The next morning, Henry wakes up later, gets out of bed, and sees the enormous bundle of cash lying on his dressing table. He didn't want it. Unsatisfied with his ease in earning money, he throws them off his balcony into the streets of London. Since he nearly caused a riot, the furious policeman comes knocking on his door and instructs him to find a more legal form of charity, like giving it to an orphanage or a hospital. The policeman stomps down the stairs and out of the door. Henry doesn't move. Those words and the fury with which they were spoken strikes hard and deep. Henry is ashamed. Then Henry gets an idea. He will win a very large sum of money each and every day of his life from this moment forward. Since he shouldn't attract attention, he plans to limit his win to £50,000 a night. He will keep moving, not more than 3 nights at a stretch in any city. London, Monte Carlo, Cannes, Biarritz, Deauville, Las Vegas, Mexico City, Buenos Aires, Nassau. Henry will take the money and establish hospitals and orphanages around the world. To make it all possible, though, he needs a partner who can sit behind a desk and receive the money, then send it where it's needed. Someone he can deeply trust forever. John Winston is Henry's accountant and had been his father's too, and John's father had been Henry's grandfather's accountant, so he chooses John. Henry can't operate in England as the taxman will take it all. He'll have to move to Switzerland. 1 year later, Henry had sent just over £120 million to John Winston in Lausanne. The money is delivered 5 days a week to a Swiss company called Winston Sugar, LLC. Nobody except John and Henry know where the money comes from or what will happen to it. Henry moves with astonishing speed, changing his identity several times in a single week. Henry dies at the age of 63 from a pulmonary embolism. He saw it coming but was very much at peace. He'd been following his plan for just over 20 years and made £644 million. He had left 21 well-established children's hospitals and orphanages around the world, administered and financed from Lausanne by John Winston and his staff. His work was complete. The wonderful story of Henry Sugar was written by Roald Dahl in his writing hut at a gypsy house in Great Missenden, Buckinghamshire, between February and December of 1976. And with that, the movie ends. We hope you enjoyed our recap. Like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing recaps. See you in the next one.